Hello, John.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. And for those that aren't where I am talking with John Pansini. You're in Sydney, Australia,
Yep.
which is nice for me because I do like
The most bloody expensive place to live. Probably not the most, but it's got to be up there,
it's
right?
getting up there. Yeah, I like it because you're in the same time zone as me, and we can just catch up at 6 p.m. my time on a Wednesday arvo, and it's all good.
Yep.
John, now we were kind of chatting a little bit before, and it's like, why do I want to have a conversation with John and just secretly record it and give it to the whole world to listen to? I've known of you for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Firstly, through a podcast that you have with Mark Bell and Matt
Tolhurst.
Matt Tolhurst. That's right. He's that little guy in the corner. Just when Matt says something, he means it. That's how I perceive it.
He's like the little nuggets. Like he just he doesn't talk much, but when he says something, it's
you listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys have got a podcast, Game the System, and I think that's where I first, because I used to work as an electronics tech on radios and stuff, and I would listen to podcasts like 6 hours a day, and it was really great. And you were the first Australian retro gaming podcast I found. I was like, cool, and that's where I first heard your voice. I did actually. I think I bumped into you and Mark at a Kong-off. One year, and I was like, and it's always crazy when all you hear is voices and then you see the people. Mark was a lot bigger and like older than I expected. For some reason, I was expecting this kind of like younger Jeremy Parish looking kind of like university student. I know. And when I saw him, I was like, oh my God, this dude's like, I don't know.
He's very tall.
They are men sort of thing, you know?
Yes.
And I guess through that, then you and I communicated a bit over the years, and I've sort of chatted with you things we have in common is we've both done an X-Station mod on a PlayStation. It's a pretty challenging solder job. I don't know if I could now. My eyes have finally started to go. I probably actually, when I did that a couple of years ago, I should have been wearing glasses. I realise now. It's quite fine lifting pin 87 and 78 and 42 and then skipping the next 6 on a like 60 pin thing the size of your thumbnail. And then you and I have kind of worked. I printed some cases for a little PS2 SD card thing. And I've just chatted with you over the years over things like you're happy to take the back off a CRT TV and work out what's going on. As well as you own arcade machines, potentially pinball machines. You've been involved in bars with video games in them, whatever we want to call them, barcades, arcade pubs, whatever. So, and you're into consoles and stuff. So you really do run the gamut of retro gaming. And I just wanted to sit down and catch up. It's been a couple of years and sort of see what you're up to. And there's going to be people that they're going to get a lot of nuggets from what you do and your experiences.
That's nice.
So just tell us a bit about yourself and I guess like what you're kind of up to, and we'll just go from there.
Okay. I'll go backwards because I think everyone goes from early age, and I think probably to go backwards is better. So where I'm at now, I did have a pinball machine, but it's gone. I sold it to Roger, and it should soon pop up at Beercade, I think, in Sydney, in Redfern. I'm really sad to see it go, but it just was a bit of a cash flow thing, and I had to do something. And pinballs, you can sell a pinball in a day if you want to. Like they're so in demand. They're very easy to sell, and I mean, in terms of investments, like I used to tell
which pinball was it?
The Shadow.
Okay, that's like a dude in a coat with the mask or something. Sorry, I'm terrible.
It's based off a movie. I think it's like 94 or something like that.
Right.
It had Alec Baldwin as the Shadow, who's like some sort of a superhero, but not superpowers. Okay, I'm going to go into the story now because actually I really like the Shadow.
If this is going to upset you, we don't have to go there.
No, it's fine. The whole thing with the Shadow is trying to remember now. He was like a mob boss in Mongolia or something, and he became so good that it's like he could predict what criminals would do, and therefore
Oh,
was able to hide himself or something. I'm not explaining it very well,
so
but
is he like
anyway,
the ultimate Sherlock Holmes or something?
in a sense, he's like a vigilante, kind of thing. Yeah, so a little bit like that. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Um, anyway, it's a very, very cheesy movie, um, and very, like it was a flop, but I love the movie. It's super cheesy, and the
That's
pinball
good.
machine's great.
Right.
Um, it's one of the like I think it's in the top 100. It's very
Oh,
well
really?
thought of. Yeah. Um, fun game from the 90s. So yeah, anyway, um, I don't have that anymore. So I don't have any pinball machines, but I've got Point Blank 2, which is at the arcade,
Yeah.
and I've got two Astro Cities, one's at home and one's at the arcade.
Yeah.
And in the one at the arcade, I have Street Fighter 3 Third Strike,
Mm-hmm.
which has become my favorite game as of probably about a year ago.
Is that because
Um,
is that because it makes you money now? Because, like,
no,
to clarify, these two machines, Point Blank 2 and Third Strike, you've got them in Beercade. So you're like
yeah,
now like a one, like, I don't think people hear about it very much anymore because it's not such a business, but you're an
yeah,
operator. So your machines are
yeah,
now there in that
yeah,
location,
yeah,
making money for you in theory.
yes, yeah. So it's yeah. So technically, I'm an operator, but I mean, I'm not a very serious one. I've only got two machines,
Yeah.
and yeah, they don't need a lot of maintenance. Probably
Mm.
Point Blank, the guns on Point Blank is probably the biggest thing. The plastic just
Because they go
breaks,
like
and you
clack
have to
clack,
replace
don't they? They've got like
it.
moving
Yeah,
parts.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And is that how
Um,
does that actually work? Because it seems like it's air or
yeah.
something.
It's a solenoid.
Oh, right. So it's just like
So
punching
there's
out, like in a pinball machine when you hear that free ball knock.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah. So
right.
pretty much exactly like a pinball flipper,
Yep.
or like the pop bumpers, exactly the same. Just yeah, it just moves the top plastic thing back and forward,
And it's
which
just
is
sort of
very
and it's
satisfying.
just spring loaded, so it punches it away and it just slams back.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
right. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
So there's a lot
yeah,
of force going on because that thing's hit the
yeah,
whack, 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 whack,
yeah,
whack, 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 like thousands of rounds a day.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, so those are probably the part that really needs the most attention. Every now and then, buttons on the Astro City need replacing, but they're super cheap. They're like $4 each, and they're available. The guns are can be difficult because it's a gun and it's generally made overseas. Australian customs make it very difficult to get
Yeah.
those.
Yeah, I've been
Um,
sort of talking to a few people about trying to get light guns, for
yeah,
Saturn or PS2 or Dreamcast, and they're like, dude, you can buy them, but there's a probability, like not a possibility, there's a probability that they won't make it
yeah,
for
yeah,
exactly that
exactly.
reason. I know
Yeah,
Sean, he brought one back for his Dreamcast, and he literally, when he got to the customs, he said to the lady, okay, so inside there is a plastic toy gun, is for video gaming. I'm just telling you right now. And she
yeah.
opened it up and went, you're good. And he was fine.
Yeah,
So he
yeah,
just got the right agent on the day, I guess.
yeah. I've heard that's how it can go, really.
Mm,
But then sometimes you can get people that are like, because I think technically, even if it is a plastic gun, it has to have like a fluoro tip or something. And if it doesn't
mm,
have that, they can
mm,
reject it.
mm.
So it can be, you know, a bit of hit and miss. I've also heard of people getting them in, inside arcade machines and stuff. If they import something, they get them to pack it inside, so it's not
Yeah, right.
obvious,
That's fair.
which is obviously quite risky, but
I
I
think I
have heard of
saw
people doing that.
one recently, like one of the YouTubers did, where it's actually in two pieces. So it breaks in half. This is one
Yeah,
where you can use it on LCDs. So it's one of the more recent iterations.
Yeah.
And it actually splits in half. So it no longer resembles a firearm, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the purpose, that was the reason, so that they would minimize international shipment issues.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, because I thought people would tell me like, I was like, okay, well, those dudes are obviously thought about it, so it's real.
Yeah, that's clever.
And I mean, people 3D print weapons all the time. There's a whole culture out there, so I'm not surprised. I'm just disappointed. So because I really want a Saturn light gun, like I want lots. They're all fun. Yeah. So with the arcade machines and stuff, I know before that you and I had talked. I can't remember to what depth about things like. I think I was asking you about CRT one time, and you were like, "Oh yeah, just crack the back and watch out for this and that and the other." Like you seem very comfortable, and I know there's like. Is there like capacitors and voltage and stuff in the back of a TV, even when it's not plugged in?
Yeah.
So how did you kind of go down that road, and was it a shocking road?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I've always been not like I kind of just some things I'll just do it. I just don't worry about it, or the drive to want to do it like overcomes the risk. Not with everything. Like anyway. I just did a lot of research, basically. And once you understand where the danger is and make sure that you take your time being safe, there's not really any reason to be afraid of it,
Yeah.
But I think also there's so many people, unfortunately, the voices on the internet can be quite loud, and the general kind of discourse when it comes to working on CRTs is like, oh, it's dangerous, you'll fucking kill yourself, basically.
Which isn't wrong, but a little alarmist.
It's not wrong, but it's not helpful. So it's like, so my whole thing was like, well, how is it dangerous? And obviously people do this. So, the knowledge has got to be somewhere. Like, how do we do this? And, I mean, in short, you basically you've got the tube, which is basically a big capacitor, a big battery. It holds the voltage, and the board takes like 110 volts, or depending, most of them take 110, and then it goes through a high voltage transformer, which takes that up to like 30,000 volts.
Holy moly! That sounds like a lot. I mean, there's a difference between voltage and current. You can get hit by 30,000 at like what 1 milliamp, and it's not even going to tickle you. But once you start getting current involved, so what happens there? Like, can you literally just touch it and it's all good unless there's power to it, or what's the go?
Yeah, so that's like the big. I mean, it's interesting. You say obviously you understand all that kind of thing, but the 30,000 or 30 kilovolts is the thing that most people go, oh shit, that's scary, and it's because it is like a battery. There's only so many milliamps or amps in it. I've never been shocked by the tube, but I have heard that it can send you across the room, and be very painful. But what's actually more dangerous in terms of lethality is the mains. Like if it's plugged into the wall and you cross the contacts that are going from the wall, it's the amperage that comes through that 240 volts that's more likely to kill you.
I guess when you're trying to resolve faults, it's kind of difficult to plug holes in a boat if it's not in the water.
Yeah.
You've got to plug the telly in and work out where am I getting, and start tracing your paths and sort of go, well, I'm not getting voltage here and here and here, therefore there I am, and without it plugged in. And that's probably the people that give that advice where it's like, oh, it will kill you. They either don't know what they're talking about, or they've done something incorrectly, and that was their experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think that and that general, voice that comes through the internet is, I think, a lot of those people are people that just want to be the guy that's like, oh, don't do that,
Oh yeah.
And you're right that they don't really know.
Mm.
But I think, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't recommend to anyone who didn't know what they're doing to work on it while it's plugged in. And you can fix a lot of things through like a trial and error type process where you work on it while it's unplugged, you plug it in, see what the difference is. That's
Mm.
I haven't ever really worked on something that was running,
Right. That's a
because
good
that is,
process. So you like
yeah,
plug it in, here's my issue, unplug it, make an adjustment,
yeah,
plug it back in, did
right,
that fix it?
yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
pretty
mean, I
cool.
I will adjust the pots and stuff like for the picture while it's
Yeah.
plugged in,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't ever try and. I mean, I haven't. You could, but I haven't sat down and tried to trace like anything while it's plugged in.
Mm.
Um, I mean, if you had a proper test bench, I think that would be the only way you would probably want to be doing that sort of thing. But you'd want to be very careful with that. Um,
Some people might have stopped
so
listening by now because all we're talking about is boring CRTs, but I actually have a bit of a love for them because, like, I mean, my CRT thing, I was like, a few years back was all about Raspberry Pi, and then
yeah,
I bought a NES, and then Sean sort of lent me this massive Trinitron. Like, I think it's like a 2720, the big guy, it's
yeah,
50, 60 hertz. You can put PAL or NTSC into it. It just says, I am
yeah,
your God now.
yeah,
And it's really been the total gateway, the
yeah,
portal. Like, if you can pick one of these up and you're looking at, I want to put everything into it, it's absolutely perfect. And just only like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was kind of like, I wanted to be able to have people over. I can't carry this thing. It's kind of in this shelf and it's there and it's a 2-man lift and all other stuff. And I was like saying, and I had a projector and I was like, I could just set it up and it's kind of goosey and stuff and take pictures up the wall. And I was saying to a few people, like, if you see anything around, let me know. And then I was having a nap on a weekend. I wake up to a message from Sean. Sean's like the center of my universe at the moment because he hooked me up with a PC engine and he's just like, I'm doing some
what a
printing.
guy.
I know I'm doing some printing for him and stuff. So it's all working out.
Mm,
And he's messaged me. He's like, this dude's got this TV and it's like a Trantron, exactly the same as what I've got for $100. And it's like 20 minutes away. And I'm like, no, damn you, nap. So I message him and he's like, dude's going to pick it up. And I didn't want to be a jerk, but I'm like, I really bloody want this. Like, I really do. I just sold a bunch of my sort of like other hobby stuff and got rid of some things. And this was kind of my goal. And I said, and I messaged him, I said, I'll give you $200.
oh wow.
Which seems like, from one angle, seems like a big step, like from 100 to 200. But in my mind, I'm like, I'd pay like $350 for this kind of TV if it's in good nick, because it really is amazing. And to kind of have an obsolescence plan is kind of what this other TV is now. And he messaged me back. Well, first of all, I didn't send the messages. I'm like, that's a jerk thing to do. I said to my wife, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, do you want it? Like, just, he's not your friend. Just message him. Like, she's a keeper. So I did that. And 20 minutes later, he's like, the guy said he's not going to make it till tomorrow or something. It's all yours. Well played. And I'm like, come on, wife, let's go. I need you to help me lift this television into my car. So we got it back. And I ended up finding this really cool old cabinet for $20. It just sits on. It's perfect and stuff. And it literally just going to sit in the shed until friends come over or if ever I really need it. I like the other day I dragged that because I was going to put wheels under the cabinet. And when I got the cabinet, it already had wheels. I'm like, boom, meant to be. A couple of handles in the end for maneuvering. And then my wife and I were playing, I took a 2600 out and plugged that in. We're playing Video Olympics, like effectively Pong, which it doesn't have her very often, but I absolutely dominated her, like crushed her soul, absolutely crushed her. And she was so shitty. And even she's like, this is stupid. And she's pretty good at stuff. Like she actually had her name up on the cabinet on a Wonder Boy at One Up here in Brisbane for a couple of years back because she grew up around roller skating rinks. I took her then. She's like, oh, I know this game. And she's like, like a ninja. I was like, well, who are you? This is insane. And it was just after Neil got the world record, Neil Gans. And she's like, well, you can tell your friend Neil. And she put up a pretty good score. She was like up on the little marquee there for a bit. But yeah, so like I guess this is why CRTs to me, yeah, at the moment there's people throwing stuff out on the street and I'm kind of driving around. Like Mike got one and all they've done is cut the power cable off the back and now he's got a beauty telly because Dennis helped him wire something in. Like they really are becoming, the more you look at retro gaming, they really are becoming a key element of it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just my awareness. Probably for you guys that have been doing this for a lot longer, and especially dealing with cabinets, a CRT tube is essential for Third Strike or Point Blank or whatever the game is.
Yeah.
But as a home retro gamer, the CRT is becoming like harder to find. Like I could buy a Saturn, I could buy a Neo Geo, but I waited weeks and months for the right TV.
Yeah.
So maintaining them, knowing someone who knows how to fix them, knowing someone to help you diagnose them, it's going to be key if you want to stick around and not be stuck emulating, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something special about them. There's no doubt about that. And it's
the way they make your hairs on your arm stick up when you turn them on, you know, like there's nothing else like that.
I do try and spread the word of the CRT. Like I had a young guy at work the other day, and I can't remember why, but I was telling him about Road Rash, and he's like, he's only 23, and he's like, oh, I'm like, yeah, it's an old game. He's like, what, like a PS1 game? I'm like,
yeah,
no, a Mega Drive. He's like, oh, okay, what's that? And so I showed him a video of it, the first game, and he's like, oh, it's so like blocky and stuff. I'm like, but it wouldn't look like that on a CRT. And I had to explain to him. And he knows what a CRT is because he's an engineer, so he's got a bit of that knowledge.
Cathode ray tube. He knows what the acronym is.
Yeah. And then we started talking about how they work, and I didn't know all the ins and outs, especially the kinds of questions he was asking, like how, you know, the guns shoot, you know, the whatever and the electrons, I think. And I'm like, I don't know, but I know, you know, I told him things that I did know. But yeah, anyway, I love those things, and I think I've got about 8 because I've been collecting them for a while, and it is a bit of a future proofing because they're not always going to be around. So I just want to have a few good ones. So there's kind of, in my mind, like different grades as well, because towards the end of the life cycle of the CRT, you had some flat screen ones and you had some digital ones, which I feel takes away some of the value, like in a retro gaming sense, because they make them. It's just not the same. But I guess it also depends on what kind of console you're running. So
if you're running a generation that matches the model of the TV,
right?
Like you try running like something on like if you imagine a Nintendo engineer, legit Japanese dude or whatever, hacking away with a developer kit on a desk, he's going to be doing it on like a CRT tube. A tube screen, whether it be like a monitor or whatever. And so as he tweaks and changes colors and geometry and the way the ball bounces or the way the dude jumps, that's how he's seeing it. And that's how he's doing it. It's a bit like Picasso painted on this like sheepskin, but we're just going to print it on a piece of A4 paper. You don't get that same depth. You don't get that same texture. You don't get it. So 100%. And I've seen a lot of CRTs come up flat screen, like a 16:9 flat screen almost. I'm like, that's not going to work. I can't do that. It's going to look weird. I might as well emulate.
Because at that time they hadn't established the standard of like 16:10, and there was all these weird aspect ratios, and then they have scalars too, and it was a weird like in between time. It was like the teenage years of displays, you know,
sort of pre-plasma.
Yeah, exactly. So you do see some of those around, and they're really, really heavy. but yeah, the analog Trinitrons is I think the sort of the best ones, and there's other brands too. It doesn't have to be a Sony. Like I've got an
Yeah.
Akai that's really good.
Oh, well, that guy back in the day was. I mean, I grew up.
Yeah.
Sort of 80s, 90s, and like my mum got an Akai tape player, and we were like, oh my god, it was like the kind of the middle class Bose or the middle class Marantz,
Yeah, right.
So Akai definitely was respected as a Sony, Akai, Sanyo, and NEC, like they were the key brands that probably, like these days, all their stuff was probably actually in all the other TVs, but the tubes that didn't quite pass a test, so that can become the terrible brand,
Yeah. Yeah. And unfortunately for us, we didn't have SCART as a standard. So most of the ones you see kicking around don't have RGB inputs. It's not necessarily bad. Like there's a lot of discussion about, is it really that important to have RGB? Like, yes, it looks really clean, but how authentic of the experience is that?
Exactly.
So, there's so many different ways you can look at it. And I think it depends on the individual as to what they like, and what and if you think about Game Boys, they won't CRTs.
No.
But it's still an authentic experience. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think that, and what I do find the most interesting is this one TV. Like I've done pretty much most of my retro gaming through this one Bravia, this one Trinitron. We own a Bravia too, and it's like the worst piece of electronic junk shit I've ever experienced. From the first 2 weeks we had it, the operating system in it, that's the Android thing, it's just shit. It's effectively, I've got a Fire Stick in it, an Amazon Fire Stick. It's just a big monitor for me.
Yeah.
My wife will watch like digital TV. Anyway, I digress, and I'm going to get angry because it's bloody awful. But what blows me away the most, having the Trinitron, is you can take everything from a NES, and I've got a bunch, SNES, PS1, 2, whatever, PC Engine, GameCube, Dreamcast, and a NES. And then, like, even when I got my OG Xbox and I plugged it in, I was like, how good does that look? Like, I'd never seen really an Xbox fire up. And that basic dash when it goes, whoa, 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 and all the green glowy shit. And I was like, this is amazing to see from a NES, which is the oldest thing I've got. I've got a Master System too, or the 2600s, but it's RF. It's sort of apples and oranges. All the way up to an Xbox, and just thinking, this is a magical creature, this CRT. It just presents everything. You see the difference. Like, I don't know if you've ever played any PC Engine, but it really, there's something very unique about the palette and the way it sort of lands. And I just find the CRT is like, it's the center of everything. If I had to get rid of a bunch of stuff, I'd just keep the CRT and just keep like one or two consoles, like it's, you've got to have one. And I only do composite. I don't even do component. I was after another telly with component. So if the option is there, I will be able to utilize it. But I just do composite, and I go through one of those little like 4-way RCA switches.
Okay.
I've got 3 of them stacked, daisy chained. So like the last console goes like through 3 of them and in the back of my TV. And it's fine. It doesn't, you can't really get wrapped around the axles. And I feel sorry for people that just get so buried in the details.
Yeah.
Just
it is like, it is a curse, like when you start to learn about what the difference is like. And I think it depends on the monitor as to how much you can see or how bad it is, like, between things like S-Video and composite and, component and stuff. But once you understand it, it is hard to unsee that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, I think the good ones are fine. Like, I mean, I mostly play, composite because I just can't be bothered, plugging in the right stuff, and it can be expensive too. It's just not really that important to me. I just want to play the game. You're making me want to plug my stuff in. I've got a TV there, but nothing's plugged in since I moved. It's just all sitting there.
Oh, well, my job's done here then if I've inspired you to plug something in. I even bought a couple of HDMI converters. I bought one for the Wii because my wife and I still play a bit of Party Tetris. And that actually was surprising because that's like 480i or something. And it actually was pretty interesting. And that was always going component into like the Bravia, which is a weird world, isn't it? Because you're like, here's the Wii, which sort of has this old school feel. It's component, but it's into my big shiny TV. It takes a bit to get your head around sometimes if you think about it too much. So I bought a little HDMI converter for that, and I just cleaned it up. I also bought one for the Dreamcast. It's just a cable that just goes out of the Dreamcast straight into an HDMI converter. And I think it's a half decent one.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, I don't like this at all. Like I can see the appeal of things being cleaner and crisper.
Yeah.
I know there's some consoles that really do benefit from a HDMI output mod, which is not a cable. It's being driven from the console.
Yeah.
And there's some games like I look at them, I'm like, dude, if this was HDMI and my TV wasn't like a laggy piece of shit, this would be gorgeous. But it's like you say, it's got to be done right, and then where do you go? Like you sort of need 3 TVs in your room to kind of achieve all that stuff. I've seen people go down the sort of the retro tank kind of HDMI and SCAR, and it just becomes a behemoth of a creature.
Yeah.
And they're constantly having to unplug and plug in. I'm like, once I have all my consoles plugged in.
Yeah.
I have a spare power supply and a spare video cable for everything. So if I want to take them somewhere, I just unplug them from the cables and walk away. Because
that's good.
It's a shit fight back in there, and I do not want to mess with that sort of thing.
Yeah. Cable spaghetti.
It is. I should really do something about it one day, but I don't want to, so I won't. I mean, getting back to kind of like console mods, and I did allude before to like the X Station for the PS1 or the PSX or whatever. I know why I did it, because I wanted every PlayStation game available.
Yeah.
Why did you do it? Was it the same, or it sounds like you just like getting inside machines and making stuff different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Actually, because I think really like the seed of all that stuff was actually listening to your podcast.
Oh, you're welcome.
Which, I think you probably, I don't know if you were really aware of, but that's what really got me looking at mods and stuff. And I don't even remember what the beginning was, but I think X Station was pretty early. I think I did some other stuff because that's pretty deep to go straight to the X Station, but
it's a very rewarding mod, though, isn't it? Like if you can solder, you actually do need to be able to solder.
Yeah,
because you've got to heat pins. Like I said before, that one main chip you've got to work on, I think it's got around, from memory, 50 or 60 pins.
Yeah,
and like it's sort of like 10 down each side or something.
Yeah,
and the chip's the size of your thumbnail.
Yeah,
to give some scale, and you've got to like lift pins 2 in a row, skip one, and to get a solder tip in there and a pair of tweezers and lift, and not affect something else.
Yeah,
it's a rough one, but if you can do
you
that,
have to be really careful.
It's really rewarding. Like I was pretty sure I'd screwed mine, and I powered it up, and there was no smoke, and I was like, "Oh my god, let's not do that again!" You know?
Yeah, so I think the good thing about the X Station is the resources out there are really good.
Yeah.
So there's that modder. I'm forgetting his name now. What's his name? He does a video on it. And he goes through the whole process and he explains exactly what to do and gives you tips on how to do it in a way. Yeah.
Because you do need a lot of confidence, and it is really good to know exactly where you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. And he actually made me feel a lot more confident about doing it.
Yeah.
And I watched it and I'm like, yeah, I think I can do this. Yeah. And then I think, something else I discovered is that I think I have been blessed with good eyes, because I seem to not have trouble being able to see that sort of stuff. And I know other people do. I know a lot of people will say not to attempt it without a scope. But I don't seem to have that problem.
Yeah.
So
I know when I did mine, because I only started wearing glasses like 9 months ago. I'm 50 I'm 51 this year, August 24,
mm-hmm.
and I did that probably, it must have been nearly 2 years ago. And in retrospect, there's no doubt I needed glasses back then. But I remember, like, when I was doing that one, so, like, holding my breath so that my eyes could just focus on, I think you'd have to have good sight for sure.
Yeah, seeing the pads and, like, the legs of the ICs.
Yeah.
It's... And then counting, like, across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's this one. I'm trying to get the...
I must have counted like each pin like 7 times to be sure,
Yeah. And then if you fucked it up, like trying to put something back on.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I remember I did a GameCube one, and they say in the instructions, like, be very careful when you're removing the heatsink. If you twist it a certain way, you can knock off some of the transistors, and of course I did that, and it was like like a tiny transistor with 3 legs, and I had to
like a surface mount or something.
Yeah. But for some reason, I just really enjoy doing that sort of thing, and I don't know. I guess I'm just lucky that I can do that. So yeah.
I learned my lesson after that, because then I went GameCube. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's just an ODE. You literally just unbolt everything. I did the GameCube like sitting in my car while my daughter had a tennis lesson. I bought like the tool, like the Nintendo security tool from JCar, and I literally was sitting in the car with the aircon on, unscrewed it all, put all the screws in the center console where your drinks go, pulled it out and went, you plug it in, put it back in. I was like, well, now I got to go home and plug it in and hope it works, kind of thing. And then, like, from then on, Dreamcast and Saturn both have the mode ODE, and everything else is just EverDrives and stuff. The X Station was like, I'm done with that shenanigans. I'm going to give shit. But obviously not you. Obviously you were like, no, this is me now.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going deeper on this.
Oh my God.
So so I think it really all started, and that kind of notion from you is like, I'm slowly converting my collection of consoles to be able to play the entire library by modding them or getting flashcards. I really like having the physical games and discs and carts, but I just can't afford to have all the games I want to play. So
for sure.
And the X Station is such an awesome mod. I think it's really, really well made. I've heard things about new developments. Like, there was a guy working on an X Station, I don't know if the right word is clone, using the Pico Pi, which is like a $20 microcontroller. So in theory, that will do the same thing as the X Station, but probably cost a quarter of the price. So that's exciting. And also the availability, because you can get a Pico Pi, on eBay in 2 days, as opposed to having to order the X Station from the US and pay a ridiculous amount for shipping. I also have this one to do. So I've done one of these before. This is the Xbox HD Plus, which randomly I was lucky enough to actually win one
Xbox?
for free. Original Xbox.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a HDMI mod.
Cool.
I don't know if there's any point showing it on the camera, but
it's just, you can show me. It's just like you and me here.
This is the board. So you have to. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see?
Yeah, it's very X Station-y.
Yeah, so
the same black with the gold tabs and stuff. And...
Yeah, so you have to desolder the multi-out that the Xbox has, which is quite, like, I found that really challenging. So the thing with the original Xbox, this is getting in deep now, so all the Game Boy people are going to turn off. But anyway,
I think they're already gone. When we said
something
CRT,
about
they're like,
the way
bye.
That the ground is. Something about the way the ground is wired. I found like you needed a lot of heat to melt the solder on any of the ground pads, and that made it really, really difficult to get that multi out. like desoldered. Anyway, yeah, so you have to do that, and then there's a flex cable, which is like you have to connect the flex cable to the IC that does all the video, like the GPU.
Yeah.
And that is really hard to get right. So that's definitely a step up from the X Station.
Wow. Up.
Yeah. And that took me a few goes to get that going, but I did get it going. And then I was lucky to just win one. Like I was on their Discord because I was asking for advice and stuff on this install.
Yeah.
And then they just happened to have a giveaway, and everyone who was on there was involved and was like, "Yeah, you won a free system." And I'm like, "Oh, fuck yeah, that's great."
Oh, geez. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll tell all my friends. Yeah, I still like. I don't know, the PS1 when I did that mod. Maybe I hadn't got sort of sentimental, or maybe like PS1s really seem like you can, like they're on Facebook like for $50 all the time.
Yeah.
And it just didn't feel bad. I didn't feel bad. And I was like, if I don't do this, this thing's never going to get played again. So I'm actually, it's like taking an old like Ford Mustang, and like, if we don't put proper running gear and a proper motor and gearbox and thing, it's going to rot in a shed. So we're actually giving it a new life. But I currently have a 2600 Vader, which is RF out is awful. And I'd really like to be able to AV mod it. And I've looked at a few different options. And no matter how you do it, you're cutting some resistors. You really like making it kind of like irreversible. There's a few out there that are reversible, but I'm still feeling like, oh, it's even though it's not very happy, I still feel a little like I recently bought a AV modded Famicom, and I'm like, yes, I'm not the butcher. Someone else has already butchered it, and and the one I've got is apparently it's got like a power filtering board in it, so it's like the best version you could do. So it's really cool. But yeah. So
I did do an AV mod for a Atari 2600. I think you have to remove the RF module, don't you, from memory?
I think you can leave it, but you definitely disconnect it. There's like pins that come out the back. But I'm pretty sure there's like some resistors or something you got to kind of like... I saw a dude was like using flush cutters and like cutting them. And there might be different versions. I've looked at 2 or 3 versions, and I'm not confident. I'm confident. I just feel like... But then again, if I don't, this Mustang's just going to rot in the shed. Because I have a Woody that has half decent RF out that's permanently plugged into the one in my room. So and I need something I can move into my living room. And every time my wife gets all smarty pants, I can whip out Video Olympics and remind her I am the king. For at least this game, for at least 21 points, I am the king. You know, that's all I ever get. So I got to work hard for these wins. So you pulled off the OG Xbox HDMI out mod.
Yeah.
And is it gorgeous?
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, because I think especially for games like Burnout and like racing, I think in particular was really getting big at that stage. I guess they were reaching a level where
races.
There's some fun racing games on there. I was playing one that I'd never heard of before. Now I've forgotten the name, which is really unhelpful. But it was like cel-shaded style graphics, but it was very realistic.
I think that's also on the GameCube. Is it like a Japanese one? You go up and down. What is that called? That's freaking rad. It doesn't drift though. It's a deceptive one. Mike and I were playing it, and like you feel like you should be drifting. It feels a bit like Initial D, but it doesn't drift. You just drive. Yeah.
Yeah. That was cool. I liked that. Yeah.
Auto Modelista.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So
I mean,
be interesting how it looks like on the Xbox, because on the GameCube, I've got a HDMI adapter for the GameCube as well. And that end of my telly, I was like, I need to take this back to the
Mm.
CRT. It just doesn't have that. It doesn't have that softness. It wasn't designed for this. But from the
Yeah.
Xbox, it might come out a little nicer.
Yeah. Does the GameCube have like video settings in it? I can't remember.
I don't know that
Just
it's got.
wondering if you can.
Don't know if it's got very much. I don't know whether you can do anything through Swiss. Swiss seems to be quite. That's sort of what it runs.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
And I think Swiss has a lot of control over your outputs
Yeah.
and how you want to. And I just think my TV is terrible. Like I've put brand new GoPro footage into my TV, and it looks awful. And I'm like, this is as good as it gets, apparently. And you make it look like junk. You're actually like downscaling everything. And then maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I just think it's a terrible TV.
Yeah, because it could be things like just depending on whether it's running in 480p or not. And then different games might not, like it might be capable of it or might not, depending on the game. So yeah, I feel like sometimes it can be game dependent, or you might need to switch the video setting to make sure it's on 480p. Yeah.
One thing that I did look into when I did the X Station was so you can put because it's a PAL unit.
Yeah.
The Trinitron will take PAL or NTSC.
Yeah.
It didn't really occur to me until I tried to play an NTSC ROM on a small NEC through like just the Mega Drive, and it was just doing weird shit. And I was like, what's going on? And then when I did the X Station and I got some NTSC ROMs, and you can kind of tune it, you can get it right, but it's still black and white. And there's this almost like you're looking through like fly screen mesh. Yeah. And then I realized, this is a NTSC thing. And there's there was a mod around for a while where it automatically detects and does like the clock switching.
Yeah.
Because you can get the colors right, but the output gets all mushy because of that. And I could never kind of work out where to get it from. And every time I'd follow it down the trail, they'd be like, they don't sell them anymore. And it wasn't even that expensive. It was like $30 and you just put it somewhere and it just did auto clock switching.
Yeah.
So
I know a guy.
Oh, do you?
I know a guy that does it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I might have to talk to you later about the guy then, sort of thing, because, and I mean, it's not really a demand I have, but I'm like, if you're going to have this thing, you might as well make it like fully capable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's crazy
about
like
Japanese exclusives and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it didn't really occur to me till recently, like the Saturn and the Dreamcast. Both of those are NTSC-J, but you can put whatever you want into them, any ROM, and they just play. And like having the Trinitron just means that the world is your retro oyster. It's it's pretty good. The only thing about those machines is I had to get step down converters 240 to 110, but I bought the one and then like a Jap power board, so it's no big deal.
Okay.
But I bought another one recently so I could take my Saturn out into the living room to the other big TV because I'm just kind of crazy like that.
Yeah.
So I guess the chicken or the egg, doing that stuff, did that then give you the confidence to get like an arcade machine and think, well, it can't be that much different, and then learn it was very different?
It was really, I was doing the arcade stuff before that. I really started on pinball, which has obviously more of a mechanical side to it. It's still got PCBs and stuff like that, but I never tackled that sort of thing or power or anything. It was only once I got arcade machines that I started trying to learn about fixing things. I think it was really because, you could get some bargains by buying something that was broken. And with monitors, I mean, the most likely thing, most of the time when things don't work, it's just the arcade power supply that needs replacing. And then the second thing from there is the monitor. And, you can pull out the chassis board and send it to Joe Mac, which lucky for us, he's Australian. And, he'll fix it up for you. But I was like, I want to try to do this myself. And so, I just learnt about some of the basics. I'm definitely not an expert. Like, I'm nowhere near that. Like, there's plenty of people that know more about that than me. But I'm not afraid to try things.
Yeah.
and I try to learn as much as I can. And there is some good resources out there. I found this random document that just has all these troubleshooting tips, and it's designed for consumer CRTs, but it all applies to arcade monitors as well, really. But yeah, there's, if you're missing a color, there's a few things you can try. And like, there's some really common issues, and people always talk about capacitors. Capacitors are the components that do age over time, and so they can be responsible for a lot of things. But at the same time, a lot of the capacitors, especially the low voltage and low, farad ones, don't tend to need replacing. It's really the high voltage ones, I think, or the high capacity ones that might need replacing. But you can tell from the behavior a lot of the time where the problems are, and even looking at them, like, you learn to identify. Anyway, yeah, I feel like I'm getting off track, but
no,
so
it's all relevant.
I learned a bunch about. I just am not afraid to try things. I can't remember exactly what got me onto doing modding, but it was definitely listening to the podcast about all the different. The mods for Game Boys are great, but actually I felt like there's a limit, I guess, to what you can do with a Game Boy.
Yeah.
Whereas something like an Xbox, it's like a PC. Like, you can do so many different things with it.
You can really
and
pimp
then
it out.
there's so much more, like, as well, And I guess that's why I've been slowly going through all my consoles. I've done GameCube, I've done Xbox, I've done PlayStation 1, I've done PlayStation 2. I still need to do Dreamcast. I've got a Saturn that's sitting there, a broken Saturn. I don't even know what's wrong with it.
So what are you going to do with those, the Saturn and the Dreamcast?
I'll definitely put in like a GDEMU or something, like the ROM, the CD-ROM.
The Fenry is pretty good too, I hear. I know. I hate to say it, but Sean recently put a Fenry, which is about half the price of the mode. The mode is, and I don't know that there's really. The reason why I bought the mode originally was because I bought the Dreamcast and then the Saturn, and you can actually just literally unbolt it from one. Yeah. And you just put a bin file in the root directory and put it in the other. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I can just play this one for 6 months and that one. And once I got one, I was like, I need them both to go now. Yeah. So I just bought another one. And I think shipped, the mode was like $300 or something. Yeah. It's not cheap. And the Fenry is at least, even if you buy a legit, I mean, Shaw brought the legit one, is at least half that, and from all accounts with Sean, there's nothing it doesn't do. So it's definitely pretty good.
Yeah, that would definitely be what I would get, Fenrir. And yeah, what else have I got to do? I'm just looking at my consoles. I think that's most of them. I've got a flash card for the SNES and Mega Drive. I don't have one for Master System.
Yeah,
and
me
I don't
either.
have one for the NES.
I'm looking. Yeah, they're the two I don't either. And I've seen a few like $30 versions off AliExpress. I'm like, I think they might work. To be honest, I recently bought an AliExpress card for my PC Engine. You know what a PC Engine is, and you know about the Hue card. So this one, and I'll talk about this every bloody episode, and people will be like, enough already. But you can see it there. It's a Hue card, but it's got a lot of componentry on it. Now this was $32.
Yeah.
And it says,
really?
Yeah, off AliExpress. And it does it does everything I need. It does as much as the EverDrive Turbo whatever.
Yep.
It doesn't do the new one that he does PC Engine CD. There's, I think, there's some FPGA on board, so it does that as well.
Yeah.
And that'd be cool. Because as you kind of get into a library, like, I'm like, I can't play that because I don't have this super expensive version. But I think if you're willing to throw $30, into 2 beers, you can afford to throw $30 at like a Master System cart off AliExpress. It's probably worth the shot.
Yeah, I haven't looked much into, what the difference is really. You know, I mean, so I don't really know, the difference between the more expensive ones, but the NES ones are like ridiculously expensive, the
It's
legit
just going to be
ones.
the color, isn't it? Like, isn't that how they get around copyright? They just change the color of the board, and they turn a transistor 90 degrees, and all of a sudden it's not the same thing. Like, they're little buggers, and I'm obviously supporting them in some way. I own several official, EverDrives, and you can
Yeah.
play the Master System ROMs on the Mega EverDrive Pro if you've got
Oh,
one of
yeah.
those, but it's
Yeah.
not the same as putting the car in the Master
Yeah.
System.
Yeah.
You can just play
Yeah. And the
Alex Kidd
controller
forever.
too.
Yeah, that's
I love
right.
the Master System controller.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. So,
So with your
yeah.
arcade
So,
machines, with like Third Strike and
yeah.
Point Blank, have you had to do much of this kind of like, all right, I'm going to pull this board out and I'm going to try this, and if it doesn't work, I'm going to be on eBay looking for a $1,200 board?
Fortunately, I haven't. I did have the chassis in Point Blank um, went, and so that was down for a couple of weeks when I sent it away to be repaired.
Mm.
Um, but
This
and
is
and
part
I
of the
was
monitor, right?
buying,
The chassis is
yeah,
part of it. So what does the
yeah,
chassis do, and what's
yeah.
that
So
going to look like?
so that board, it's got that high voltage transformer on it that I was talking about before. So
Right,
that takes, the signal from the arcade board. It sends the RGB and the sync to the
right,
chassis, and then the chassis grabs power from the 110 volts, and it then takes that signal and
right.
sends it through like
So it's kind of
the
the
vertical.
GPU in an
Yeah, in a
old-fashioned
way,
way.
yeah, I guess. I mean, it's like the video driver board,
Yeah, right.
really.
Mm,
But yeah, so that's what it does. And they just die because they're getting old.
mm,
And yeah, a lot of it is capacitors, but it can also be transistors, like
mm,
typically transistors go.
mm.
Um, so
I mean,
yeah, so
as an RF tech, I always used to say to people, I only have a job because of, and I'm not a nerd, but I know this because it sounds smart. I only have a job because of the third law of thermodynamics. Entropy, entropy increases over time, and that's effectively what you're describing. There is things just
yeah,
eventually fail.
yeah, yeah, yep, yeah. So but most of it's fixable. I think really it's just going to depend on you know when parts dry up, but I don't know
Mm, mm,
when that's going to happen. I know that I think it's actually like we were talking about before, that the teenage years, that middle ground, that's more of a problem when some of the digital stuff started to come in that is
mm,
maybe no longer available. So I have heard that Joe Mac doesn't like to work on the MS9 series of Nanal, which is the brand boards, and they're typically in the Astro Cities and like 29-inch displays, like bigger displays, like
mm,
from that early 2000s kind of era.
mm.
Um, the MS8s are like one step earlier, apparently like very good. So yeah, I mean MS9s are good, but so this is only through the grapevine. So you should can take it with a grain of salt. But this is what I've heard, and it worried me because I'm like, if he can't fix them, then we're up shit creek kind of thing.
Mm, mm, mm,
Because if he can't fix it, like no one else is going to be able to fix it, I
right.
guess.
He's the man.
Yeah, and I anyway, going back to the point is, I think it's due to some of that digital componentry that isn't really relevant. Like a resistor and a capacitor will always be relevant, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if it's like I mean, I'm getting to the edge of my knowledge, I suppose. So, but does it make sense what I'm saying? Like some
Yeah, yeah,
digital
yeah, yeah.
component,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
As it becomes
that's
all
no
like
longer relevant.
processed, I mean, like, we talk about like an onboard transistor, like a surface mounted transistor, like the thing you knocked off with your GameCube. Like that
Mm,
effectively, there's a lot of reproductions of all of those things, same as caps and same as all sorts of stuff. you will buy one that will replace the one that you're tearing out of a 30-year-old console or whatever, but it'll be better. It'll be more efficient. It'll be cleaner. It won't give off the heat and all that sort of stuff. But when you're relying on like some sort of surface mount chip with like the 60 legs that basically takes the workload, or a bunch of transistors on surface mount, and maybe even capacitors and resistors, because it's all just like ons and offs and things. All of a sudden, you've got this one chip that's doing a whole bunch of stuff, and they're not necessarily replaced reproduced, because chips are often made for a market. Like when you start watching documentaries on why this particular version of let's say, I'm going to make shit up, the Mega Drive failed, or like a phone failed, it was because some Chinese manufacturer kind of went, it's no longer efficient for us to produce that. We're going to produce this version of this chip. Therefore, you have to design your phone or whatever around this chip. So that obsolescence just creates, and that's what you're talking about, these boards that were built around chips, because as the silicon started to become more effective, I think there was like, you found the industries were starting to have to work with, well, that's the shovel they're going to give us. We're going to make our holes how the shovel digs, kind of thing.
Right,
and it's not being reproduced. It's like trying to put, unleaded cars now. But remember when we used to put like super in an old Holden, it's like, you just can't now. There's no way of making that happen again. The car has to be converted, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It must be a weird time, like especially around the sort of Xbox, when, like you said before, like I've seen those plasmas that are like 4 feet deep, let alone wide. They're in like a massive cabinet on their own. Like, what if you're into those? I mean, they used to get horrible screen burn and all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, what if you're into plasma TVs? Like, someone is. Someone's into everything,
Definitely.
And what are these dudes doing? Like, I don't even understand how that works. Plasma to me is like glowy blue light, and it's nothing to do with that, So Do you have sort of like with your Astro City? That I assume that's what the Third Strike is in. Yeah. Like the like, do you look at that monitor, that CRT, and sort of go, I need to start thinking about sourcing another one of those? Or is it pretty easy to find something that's going to slot in there? Because is yours the one where you can rotate it as well?
Yeah, you can rotate it. Yeah.
That's crazy, That's such versatility, because they could put like a fighter in and then go through like a vertical shmup in. And they're good to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's not super easy, but it's easier than like an older machine. They definitely made it. You have to lift it out. You really want two people, but if you had to do it on your own, you probably could. But you do have to disconnect everything, and that includes one thing we didn't mention when you're working on CRTs, which is discharging the tube, which is a very important process.
Because it is a big capacitor.
Yeah. So when I talked about the safety element of it, that's really what I'm talking about. And it's important, I think, to take your time and just be careful, because if you start skipping steps in like a safety protocol, that's when you start taking risks, and you might get zapped. For example, the example that I always give is, I always use a multimeter to double check my discharge line to ground, just to make sure that it's definitely has continuity. Because if for some reason it didn't, or maybe I connected it in the wrong place or something like that, you do stupid things sometimes. So it's good to just double check.
Yeah, anyway, for sure.
Yeah, so you need to disconnect everything, and
this is to turn the screen.
Yeah.
So do you have like an obsolescence plan for that screen? Because I mean,
no, it's not something I like to think about.
I'm sorry. I like bringing up sensitive issues, unfortunately.
It's a good question. I don't. There's it's one of those things that I think there's plenty around, but everyone loves them, so the demand is high, and that makes them expensive. So they're around, but they're expensive.
I guess you almost have to buy like a whole new machine and just and hope that the monitor, the CRT that's in that is as good a shape, if not better, because you could be buying something off someone. And I guess that kind of leads me to, like when we first started talking about the podcast and me sort of like getting a handle on like, oh, there's a real community. And I kind of like hit the gas just like a few months before a Kong off. So I was there and Billy was there and Walter was there and I met a bunch of people around Brizzy and just, like if you can find a community that's really supportive and isn't sort of like a bunch of assholes that are just trying to move their crap shit on, then it's going to make you find those good little nuggets on the internet, but surely just knowing real people that kind of give a crap. And like you talk about, what's it, Jomac or whatever, you can send stuff to that dude, but it's probably also quite helpful if it's not worth you like shipping a monitor or whatever halfway across the country. Those people are important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and you're becoming one of those people. Like more than me. Let's not deny it. And so if I decide I might if I buy this new candy cab, and it's like, there's no blue, John. What's the deal? And so this is why it's important that we kind of retain this information and handle them willingly, because there's nothing worse than knowledge just kind of being hoarded. For the sake of ego fluffing, it just shits me.
Shits me a lot. I get really
it's not a competition.
By that too. Yeah. I mean, it is funny, like the whole conversation around Jomac. There's a whole thing about that, and he's such an awesome guy. And, I've spoken to a friend of mine, Pat, who's online Shower. I don't know if you're aware of him. You might not be because I know you're not like on the Discord and stuff.
I'm well on the fringe of the arcade stuff. I treat it much like everything else. I love to look at it. I'm the second worst gamer in the world, and I just really appreciate the passion that people have for it. There's so many like world records set in Australia, and I'm going to wave the flag for Brisbane. I was like, what the hell is going on? Like little Australia, like between Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne, and that drives people to keep equipment healthy.
Yeah. We do seem to feature a lot in the records. Anyway, so my friend Pat has visited Jomac. So Jomac's in Perth, so it's pretty far away, right?
It is.
But he said that he invited him in like family, and he gave him a whole tour of the workshop and talked to him for ages and was very, very nice. And that's awesome. But at the same time, like, if you go onto Aussie Arcade or somewhere or even Facebook and say, "Oh, I've got this thing, anyone know might be wrong with it," people will just be like, "Just send it to Jomac." And it's like, okay, that's great, but we can't just rely on him. He does a great job.
Yeah.
But part of the problem, I think, is actually the cost involved with getting him to do a repair or refurbishment is actually really reasonable. So like, if you're going to pay $110 plus shipping to fix your game, it's not even really worth. By the time you've looked at it, like if you decide I'm going to recap this board, okay, it's got all these caps, you've written them all down, that took you an hour. Then you go on RS Components, you order them, that took you an hour.
Yep.
Like, why would you bother when you can just pay him $110 and get it back in a week?
$33 if you do it that way. It's like $33 an hour, and you're done. Like, and you might do a terrible job. That would be how I would think. I might actually ruin this.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, from an economical perspective, just send it to him. But at the same time, like,
it's a bit of a double-edged sword.
We really need some competition for him. We need some other people that know how to do this stuff just for the sake of being able to keep these things alive, when he's not around, or even just because he's too busy or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, if he did just say, look, I'm done, I'm going to buy a yacht, I'm going to sail around the world, there'd be a lot of machines that would, I mean, what would you do? I mean, I guess he came from somewhere. So,
Yeah.
a few of us would get together and kind of work it out, but it would be there'd be a few more tears along the way. Well, sorry, John, we cooked your chassis, learning how to not do that kind of thing,
Yeah.
Did you get your machine from here, the third strike and the point break, the point blank from here in Australia?
The third strike, yeah. So I mean, it's a mixed bag. The two Astro Cities that I have, one guy got it from a guy locally a while ago now. The other one came in through Highway, who import machines. Um, I Highway's fine, but I'm not the biggest fan of Highway. I'm probably not going to say much more about that, but
Yeah.
I think I don't know where the machines come from, but anyway, they import machines, and so one of them came from them. The point blank I bought off Scott, who's a operator in Sydney. Yeah, and it's just kind of once you become part of the community and people know you, and if they know what you like, like it was literally, he was just like, oh, I know, you're after one of these. Do you want this? You want to buy this? And like, yep. So that was nice. Aussie Arcade's another great way to get stuff.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I know of several people that've just got them. They've been brought over like in a container of machines.
Yeah, yeah.
So I wondered, was that how you got yours? It seems to be really
no,
common.
not really.
Because I have seen like a few videos of like Kid Shuriken and stuff, like this massive Sega arcade in Aki Harbour has just shut down. So it's like, well, they've all got to go somewhere, and I guess that's happening in Japan a lot. I mean, they've just got when we went, there was just floors and floors, like this building that was like 5 stories, and every story was just 200 machines, and like if that place just stops, they go somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot of people talking about importing. I think it's really hard to do. So the only people I've actually heard of doing it, I think there's one guy who I don't know much about that's done it, and then there's Highway. That's all I know for sure where that's happened.
Yeah.
I think people like to talk about the idea, but it's difficult. There is a lot of stuff locally, not so much Astros, but you see a lot of machines come up, but you're also fighting with. There's a lot of businesses where they will pick up these machines, take the CRT out, put an LCD in, stick a Pandora in it, and then sell it for like $1,500 or something.
That's a shame.
Yeah, yeah.
I can see why they would.
Yeah, well, it's a business, and there's a lot of, punters. I think of them as the punters who just want that machine in the corner of their house. And unfortunately, sometimes it's got like Jack Daniels printed on the side or something like that.
Yeah.
But I know I tend to be a bit of an elitist with that sort of thing. I like to have things, original.
I think, it depends on the cab. If someone went and took like a perfectly good Frogger and they just like, masked over it, whatever.
Yeah.
Ford Racing, you'd be like, dude, could slap you. But I mean, there's there's a really massive market for those, like, custom made from scratch, 10,000 games. And it both surprises me and I guess I'm happy to see that market, because at least that if someone's like, oh, for $1,200, here's this thing that's brand new and it does everything and blah, 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 as opposed to someone taking a perfectly good cab and stripping it down and butchering it. Because I know we were talking before about, I only know him as Dave through sort of Facebooky stuff, Netherworld, which is the big bar in Fortitude Valley in Brisbane, and Dave was the mechanic there. Yeah. And I think for the Kong off, they have like 10 Donkey Kong machines, and like Dave's personally built from scratch, like 8 of those machines, or I don't know what the numbers are. And when you sit and you look at them and you're like, that's pretty freaking cool. It's the absolute opposite to what you were talking about, like bringing
Yeah.
and they really do look so good that you can be easily fooled, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The board's
Yeah.
original, the CRTs are CRTs,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like they're freaking gorgeous when you see a bunch of them in a
Yeah.
row. The
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
doing
Definitely.
that is like they should be very much rewarded and thanked
Yeah. I
for
mean,
perpetuating
yeah.
that.
Yeah. In terms of, I think for me, it's always about the experience. So it doesn't have to be original. If someone's capable of reproducing something that gives a really authentic experience, then to me, that's great. So, yeah, I felt like that as well. If they built the same thing with like an LCD screen, I'd probably be a bit disappointed. I feel that's, it doesn't give you the same feeling. Same with controls and stuff. The controls have to be right.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's pretty cool that people are doing that. And actually, that reminds me of something else that I thought of to mention before. There's the Open Nintendo project where
Sounds
someone's
like
like
someone's going to get a
recreated.
cease and desist eventually.
I forget what they call it, but it's like they're like you can buy all the components and build your own NES
Oh, right.
console.
I've seen this happen
Yeah,
with Game Boys where they got like a printed PCB
yeah.
and then, yeah, you'd buy all the stuff and someone's like, it costs like $600 to buy all the things to do it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
building from scratch, I mean, that's pretty freaking rad.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I didn't actually. I've got other machines too. I've got a Time Crisis 2 in my garage,
Oh, wow.
and I've got this old machine. So a lot of them are picked up basically broken, and I've kind of pieced them together. The Time Crisis I didn't. I bought that working, but um, I also have Ghosts and Goblins or Ghouls and
Oh,
Ghosts. I always get them mixed up.
yeah.
But
They're all terribly
the
hard. If it's got ghosts and something, then I don't go near it because it's just mind
yeah,
boggling.
yeah. But the PCB in that is not working, but the
Mm,
monitor works, and
mm,
that's a really I don't know what era it's from, but I think the monitor's about 14 inches or something. Like it's a small one,
mm.
and it's that kind of really closed in cabinet. Um, it's
Is the monitor
early
like deep
earlier style.
down inside the cabinet, and
Yeah,
you're like a
yeah,
foot and a
yeah,
half? The glass is like a foot and a half back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, what
yeah.
made you want to kind of put them at that beercade and just let
Mm.
a bunch of other people just bash away at your
Yeah,
loved possessions?
I think again, it was like something where just being part of the community, the opportunity came up. I know not everyone would do that though, and that's something
Mm,
Mark and I talk about a bit as well because, I tried to organize a pop up which got killed by COVID because it was just before
is that
COVID.
the Rumble in the West?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And actually finding people to put their machines on display was quite difficult because a lot of people
Mm,
don't like the idea of their machines being out in public.
yeah.
And that's understandable because to them it's like a collectible.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't really see it that way. I don't really care if someone scratches it, or I always feel like it can always be restored. And
Yeah.
what's more important to me is that people can enjoy this thing that I love. Like,
Yeah.
and that's why my Astro City has Third Strike, my favorite game. It's definitely, it wasn't put in because I thought it would make money. Um, it was put in because I wanted to have a bar that had Third Strike, so I could go there and play Third Strike with other people and drink beer. That's why
Yeah.
it's there.
Yeah.
And for the
If you,
same reason, like I run my monthly comp,
yeah.
Third Strike comp, which has grown over time.
Oh,
And
good.
now it's great. It's got to the point where, because we didn't do it in December, but I forget what day it was, but one Thursday, because I'm on a Third Strike Discord as well, I was like, hey, I'm thinking of going to Beer Cade tonight. Does anyone want to come and play? And like five guys showed up.
Yeah,
And
sick.
we played Third Strike, for a couple of hours and drank beer, which is,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, It's like the closest thing to heaven.
Yeah,
That's
I
fun.
wish I could play fighters. I don't know. I don't have a head for it. I love watching. I think I've invited like both Mike and Sean over at different times. Last time Sean came over, play some Saturn, and I was like, and I think I did this almost every time I go gaming with people. I end up just sitting and watching because I'm kind of terrible. And like, both Mike and Sean have won like the big Netherworld comp. Can play almost anything, and just and I think I prefer just to, once I've sort of had 2 or 3 games, I'm like, I'd actually prefer just to sit here and enjoy the parallax of the background shooting behind, or just enjoy the audio and things like that. And it's the same with fighters. I love watching them because some of the animations, like the Saturn's got some, it's got, Children of the Atom and X-Men vs. Street Fighter and another X-Men game. And what goes on is just like, I can't even keep up with it watching, let alone play it. So I do appreciate what a fighter does for a person, when they're good at it, and people talking about timing and this and that and the other. And I wish I could like it more, but I'm just, no, I'm terrible at them. And therefore it's a bit like I don't dance in public either because I'm terrible at it. Yeah.
As long as you're having fun, that's the important
thing. That's exactly right. I mean, that's one of the good things about going to like BPAC, which is the big arcade comp and stuff, in Brisbane each year. And I haven't been for a couple of years. I think this year I'll go back. And the Kong offs and stuff. And just, I think sometimes it's really great just to see people passionate about something. Like absolutely. you can go and watch a bunch of dudes playing that silly game with that tiny mini tramp and the ball, and they bounce it off each other. It's always like 4 uni students at the beach with their shirts off, and I'm like, you douchebags. But they'll watch them play, and they are having the best time. They're really good at it, and they're just happy. And I'm like, that's all that really matters right there and then. And you can still appreciate, douchebags having a good time. You don't have to be their mate. It's all fine. BPAC's not full of douchebags. Let me correct that.
No.
But it's the same thing. When you see people that are just passionate about something, and it can be infectious. I know when I went to the Kong off I went to, because I've got a cab that I built. It's the shape of a cab. It's got a pie in it. It's got an LCD. I run shaders, and I bought some good sticks. You can switch them to a 4-way and an 8-way and stuff. And I came home and I played Donkey Kong like every day for like a week. And I was like, next year I'm going back. I don't even care if I get smashed. I want to be part of that. And after a week, I was just bloody exhausted, and it just didn't last. I look at people like Matt Tecchio and that will just stream for hours. I'm like, you're broken. What is wrong with you? And all the guys, like, I watched Neil do Ghosts and Goblins. I'm like, dude, you need to have your head checked. That's insane that you can do that. But it can be infectious. You can see things in games, and you're like, I wouldn't mind being able to just do that. The same as Street Fighter. I brought when Mike was over playing the PC Engine, and the PC Engine controls only got 2 buttons. And so to switch between punches and kicks, you've got to hit like a select button in the middle.
Okay.
And Mike got like right through Street Fighter to the end, never having played it before. I was like, that must be so cool to just pick up a random console and just go, how's this work? Well, I'll just use punches. It's fine. It's just like shredding. I was like, that's what I like to see. I like to see people dominating the machines. Don't tell the AI I said that. It's not.
Yeah. I think any high level gameplay is definitely always good. And
it's better when you understand a little. Like I went to that Kong off having played a bit, and then it's a bit like I do a lot of mountain biking, and it's a little bit crazy. I wear a big helmet sometimes. You tell them we're mountain bike, I did this, and they're like, whatever. But if you talk to someone who's ridden a bicycle, they're like, whoa, that's pretty wild, man.
Yeah.
So if you know a little, and then you see someone do crazy shit, you're like, dude, that's amazing.
Yeah. Maybe that's part of that key when you're at a thing like BPAC and the Kong off. You're there and everyone's getting excited and it's like, oh, what just happened? And then someone will be like, oh, he got the strawberry or
Yeah.
fucking whatever, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Cool.
why is that good? Oh,
Mm.
because, then he'll blah, 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 get this or
Yeah.
whatever. And it's like, okay. And that's when you start to understand, you know, I think
Yeah.
that's what's great about the pins at Netherworld too, because they kind of force you to gain that little bit of knowledge to
Yeah.
get the pin. And
Oh, the little.
then,
So you're talking about pins, like as if you would
yeah.
stick on your shirt, but everybody just puts them up on like a little board and stuff. Yeah.
Well, so like how those pins
Yeah,
work.
I've got
Yeah.
the Ghosts and Goblins one because I
Yeah.
100% cheesed it where you just run backwards and forwards on the first level. It's like I think it's like 40,000, and someone's like, because I'm like, oh, I'd like just one of them, any of them, and then someone's like,
Yeah.
if you run backwards and forwards here, you'll eventually get 40,000 points. And I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm just doing this. I don't care.
How long did that take?
Not very long. I don't even know what the value was, but it's the only one I've got. It's around here somewhere. And it's like, I don't care. I don't claim to be good. I don't claim to be nice. I don't claim to be friendly. I just want a pin. So I got that one. That was a few years ago. They probably changed the rules now, like no cheesing, but whatever. What's point pressing, stand up next to Kong, jumping up and down on that pole. Like, what's the difference? Anywho, pins are good.
Yeah. So I think it's probably a good time to mention the new project that Mark and I put together.
Yeah, what is this?
So speaking of high level gameplay and that sort of thing, it was kind of his idea, and I think it came out of having a lot of discussions about Twin Galaxies and some of the not so much controversy, but just the way that submissions have to be done and
Yeah.
all that sort of thing. And like, I think they're very specific about certain things, not so much about other things. Like, it has to be original hardware, but then you've got all these guys like playing on flash carts, and there's some things that just don't make sense like that.
It does seem to be a lot of like room for interpretation.
Yeah,
Is my understanding
but
from the very outside.
yeah. And also, I think that it's because it's all points based. It doesn't capture some other ways that you could play games. Like speedrunning is a great example, and then
Yeah.
you've got speedrun.com, which is great. And when you watch speedruns, you start to look at games from a different perspective. So I think he was thinking about what's a different way we could measure gameplay at a high level. Um, other than just points or just speed. And what's a way that we can measure gameplay at a high level that is more inclusive of modern games, which often don't have points? And what other ways can we think about high level play? And so he told me his idea, which was to try and take into account survival in terms of like most games have lives or have moments that are considered like a death. Um, so back in the day you would always consider like a 1cc run as or one credit clear
Yeah.
as high level. Didn't matter like how long it took or how many points you got.
Yeah.
And then if you could then the next challenge from there is like, well, can I do it without dying?
Yeah.
Um, and so we've come up with a system that combines all of those things and kind of aggregates those different elements. So it ranks people based on deaths and whether or not they've done a 1cc clear, or basically there's ranks from that are based on number of credits used, number of lives used. And then we also rank people on their points and their speed. So to get the highest rank, you have to do a 1cc without dying. But then within that, people would be separated by an aggregation of their points and their speed. So if you're the fastest person, you'll earn a certain amount of points based on how many people have submitted. And that will be combined with your like score points. Sorry, it's a bit complex, but
no, I get
the
it.
whole
So
idea was
you're
to
really going to
kind
get the
of
best of the best. I mean, the number one on any particular game is going to be the fastest with the most points. One CC, no deaths.
yeah.
The maverick of the Top Gun of that game,
Yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So and it doesn't work for everything because some games you know, like one of the examples we had was Nibbler, because in Nibbler you build up your lives and then you lose them, when you want to have a break.
Intentionally, yeah. I remember seeing,
Yeah.
was it Matt Kibbe or whatever, a couple of years ago, and just
Yeah.
he'd like build up
Yeah.
X amount of lives and then go and have a wee while it just like
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
smashed itself. And you're like,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is weird, but that's
Yeah.
how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think Donkey Kong's another example, and I don't really want to speak to that because I know that there's a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge, but put simply, the traditional way that the game is played, which is thought of as the most superior, doesn't fall into our model in that same way. So
Oh,
you need to, in order to achieve a high rank in our model, you have to change the way that you play the game.
yeah.
And this is a really hard thing for people to get their heads around because they're so used to playing it. And I'm getting into controversy now because I know I'm going to piss some people off by saying this, but fuck it, because it's true in my opinion.
That's
Um,
fine. Yeah.
yeah, they're so used to playing it a certain way that to say, "Oh, that's not necessarily the most skillful way to play," is really challenging. And I can understand that because if you imagine that you've put in however many hours, like that whole 10,000 hours rule, if you put
Yeah.
in 10,000 hours into something and someone says that 10,000 hours that you spent doing that, well, guess what? That's worth nothing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you're
I
going to
mean,
be like,
they're still going to
oh,
carry some of that skill over though. Like if they decide to, and
yeah,
it's not like you're saying, okay, all that way everybody's been doing that. It just stops.
yeah,
They can still continue to do that, right?
yeah,
They can still
yeah, that's
continue to
true.
go down the Twin Galaxies road, or whoever deems you as fifth in the world for Donkey Kong based on
Yeah,
the current performer and the current
yeah,
process. They can still do that. They can just ignore you
yeah,
and just go,
true.
"Oh, John and Mark are a bunch of dicks. We're just going to
Yeah,
keep banging away the way we do."
yeah,
But then again, it's nice to have an option. Some people might turn around and sort of
yeah,
see it as relief. Like if
yeah,
they've just been like point
yeah,
pressing or whatever and running back and forwards across that
yeah,
first screen of Ghosts and Goblins, and they're like, I'm
yeah,
sick and fucking tired of doing this. I wish I could have
yeah,
fun again. They might look at it and
yeah,
go, hey, that creates a whole new set of challenges for me. And
yeah,
I am pretty bloody skilled because I'm currently fifth in the world.
yeah.
So
And
if they're all right at it, they'll just go, oh, I can just move over here and I'll dominate their little league as well. So it
yeah,
can
you
go
have to
both
adjust.
ways. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's you're 100% right. And I think you really hit the nail on the head too, in terms of what was Mark's motivation behind starting to think this way, especially as someone. So if you imagine he's coming from a position, he has I hope I don't get it wrong, Ghosts and Goblins, Ghouls and Ghosts. I don't know. Fuck, I can't remember which one's which. Anyway, he has a world record, right? That
Yeah.
took 9 hours. It's a 9 hour long game,
Goodness
and that's
gracious.
a game that you can keep playing. There's no end, so
Yeah.
it's a marathon game.
Yeah.
Um, and he's like, I need a different challenge. I need
Yeah.
a different way to
Yeah.
look at this because
Yeah.
playing a 9 hour game is not really fun. Um,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
So how can we make it fun to go after a record that's considered, you know, very high skill? And
Mm.
that's, you limit the time by making speed worth something, and you
Yeah.
limit the time
Yeah.
by making one credit clear worth something. And then it becomes a balance of, how do I balance my points versus my speed and do it without
And
dying?
lives as
So
well.
yeah, so it's a whole new, it's
Mm.
just a different way to think about
There's nothing
playing,
wrong with
almost
different.
like, the difference between, like, yeah,
We
I
look at
could
the
go
different
on,
way
but
people
yeah,
play chess. You can sit down and watch, like you and I might play chess, And it might be like, look, whoever wins this wins. That's all that matters, and we're going to have a few beers and do it. But you watch any kind of YouTube chess, they've got a little clock, and they've got like 3 minutes each. And they move, tap, move, tap, move, tap. And like, there's many people that wouldn't enjoy that version of chess. They're like, dude, I don't want to be pushed. I'm literally going to I'm just going to play this with you, and we're going to have some conversation between. So it's going to be a similar thing where it's just a way. And that's how the professional world of competition chess works. You don't have to sit on the veranda with me and enjoy it my way. You can stay where you are, or you can come over and enjoy this as well. It's going to be fine.
Yeah. And that's a good way to put it.
You guys will be right. I mean, you'll just start doing it, and people will either like it or they won't. And it's I think it's always good to just offer variety in whatever.
Of course.
And the speedrunning thing is so bizarre because there's some freaks out there that I think if AI tries to take over, unleash those people. Like I watched, like the winter games done quick and summer games done quick. I think I watched like a bunch of the summer one, and there was two dudes that speed ran like Marble Madness. I talk about this all the time. Marble Madness on NES.
Oh, right.
Like 2-player. And it's a bit tricky because you got to kind of like draw the little spring thing, and then he runs, and then the bridge closes, and blah, 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 blah. And so after that, they're like, whoa, that was awesome. 12 minutes of awesome. So one dude grabs both controllers, turns one upside down, and speed runs the thing two-handed, 2 players.
Oh, my God.
That dude... He's going to defeat the AI because that's not a human. That's from outer space. Like that's incredible.
That's a really hard game too.
Yeah, it doesn't really. Yeah. It's not as flowy as it looks like it should be. You're trying to get that ball to move, and it's like trying to steer an old car. You're spinning the wheel all one way and then back the other way and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be ways, and speedrunning is interesting, and even speedrunning embraces that variation, like 60% no death, or 100% all items, or mega glitch, or whatever. So if you bring that aspect, that attitude in, you're going to allow people to understand that we're just doing it differently. It's still fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So we don't have
all right,
a
dude.
way
well, look,
of...
it sounds pretty exciting. Like, I think it's going to be, it's going to be positive in whether it be on a small or a large scale. So we'll keep in touch, and like you can. I'm sure if anybody listens to your podcast, Game the System, then they'll get an update on sort of where it's tracking, and there'll be plenty of information out there. Once it's got a name, then we can tell everybody what the name of the new.
Oh, it does have a name. It's out there.
What's the name?
It's actually live now. So it's called Game the System Ranking Points League or Leaderboard.
There you go.
Yeah. I'm not sure if you Google it if it comes up.
Let's have a look. Game the System Ranking. Game the System Ranking Design. I don't know. Could be all night. Anyway, you can give me some. I'll get some links off your stuff, and people can go and suss it out.
Yeah, it's gamethesystem.co/GTSRPL.
There you go.
GameTheSystem.co. Yeah.
All right. We might start sort of wrapping this up a little bit, John. I've kept you for a good hour and 40 now, and look, it's been pretty awesome to talk about so much stuff, especially the CRT stuff, because it seems a little bit like magic, and it kind of is. But you just need to find the right wizard to help you get through the magic sort of thing, I guess. And I might just sort of give you an opportunity now to sort of plug, whether it be your own wares or, obviously have a chat about the podcast that you guys have got there. And anything else, your local bakery, doesn't really matter. Might do a great croissant and you want everybody to know about it.
I think the biggest thing, if you go to gamethesystem.co, you can see sort of all the things that I'm involved in. It's really Mark's baby, but that's our base for our Discord, our podcast, and now the ranking points leaderboard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know you're not really on the Discord, but we could have a lot of discussion there about, all things. Like if, for example, the AV mod, or even CRTs and stuff, when you have questions about those sorts of things, if you pop it into our Discord, someone will be there who has
Yeah.
the answer
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
can point you
Cool.
in the right direction.
And can anybody
We've
join
got
that
some.
Discord?
Sorry.
Can anybody join that Discord?
Yeah, anyone can join. There's no limits at all.
Okay.
We're obviously primarily Australian based, but we like to have people from overseas too. It's just a community, and yeah, of mostly old dudes who just love classic gaming and pinball.
Seems to be a common narrative these days. Like, oh, road rash, what's that? Don't bother. You'll only ruin it or something. I know. I was listening to a podcast the other day where you were talking about you used to be able to go somewhere and it didn't really matter how noisy it was. You play games and have beers. Now you're like, I actually want them to go away. I don't care if they're winning at that game. I just want to chill, have a beer, and play this game. And I totally hear you. I just don't go places. That's why I bought all the consoles I can get my mitts on, and very discreetly, very specifically use them with certain people at certain times. Like that's how I keep people off my lawn.
Yeah.
I don't advertise my lawn. I don't go where other people's lawns are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Look, I'm going to let you go there. Thank you so much for spending this time and educating me and anybody who's listening on CRTs. And it wasn't meant to be kind of the key topic, but it always leads into everything else. I still think the CRT in my life is the hub, and everything else exists only because I've got this god of a creaturey thing to kind of like everything else can sort of come through it. So if anybody is curious on doing some maintenance or picking them up or whatever, your story is a really good story of like, well, I just wanted to know. I didn't want to just be sitting back thinking, oh, I probably couldn't. And finding a good friend that has some ideas, or jumping in the Discord there with you guys at Gamer System, or just jump it on YouTube and listen to a few people that you think this person is sensible. I think I can trust their advice. And you can pick up a couple of cheapies because you can get them cheap. Like there's a lot of CRTs around that are like $30-$50. They're small and crappy, but why not get one of those and open it up and have a poke around and discharge? Maybe there's not as many volts in that one, so if you do make a mistake, it's not going to throw you across the room and just knock you off the chair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
all
for
right,
sure.
Mate. Thanks again for your time, eh? Really do appreciate it. We'll be in touch. And if you're up here for BPAC or whatever, I can't go out drinking like you guys do. I don't know how you do it. But I'll have a quiet one with you during the day if I bump into you.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, John. Thank you, mate.
Okay. No worries.
Bye.
See ya.